Right. People see my screen. Cool. So this is just to explain to people who, oh, there we go, who may be just joining. We're going to start today off with a Menti. So this is like an interactive quiz type of thing. And this will be our introduction for today. So you can either go to this website, www.menti.com, and enter this code down here, 77816441, or you can scan this code if you want to use your phone to do it. So either way, and let me know if there are issues. All right, is everyone set to go? You can give a, I saw Sarah Rivas, trademark Sarah Rivas thumbs up. So, oh, and the lady thumbs up. Okay. So we're all good. For people coming in, we are just doing a Menti, which is like an interactive quiz kind of thing. And this will be our introduction for the rest of what we're talking about in seminar today. So this is just like a temperature check for how you feel about writing. On your screen on your phone, you should be seeing an option to give your feedback, but this is a question about how confident are you when it comes to writing. You are very confident when it comes to writing. You know where to look to find resources, and you feel comfortable asking for help. So just rate what you think applies to you from strongly disagree to strongly agree, and we'll see what the group thinks. Give it another second just in case it bobs and moves again. Oh, interesting. This is also good to see because I don't know about anyone else, but I always feel like asking for help with writing, I feel like like I feel comfortable with that. But then sometimes like the words on how to ask are always come out so jumbled. Um, and then I have to repeat by accident. But does anyone else have that kind of experience? Oh, we got a little bit of movement. With any of these, any comments or stories? For people who were involved or came to the NPDI sessions last year, do you find that your answer, if you can remember, we have the recordings, I think, but do you remember if your answer may have changed a little bit? I see a couple of head shakes.
Quiet group today, but I was just going to hop on and add. It seems that people feel slightly less confident when it comes to writing, but do feel more comfortable asking for help. So I just want to reiterate that throughout the process, we're here to help you. That's our job. You're not bothering us. So it can be over Slack, it can be email, whether that's to us individually or npdi@luk.org. But just wanted to highlight that.
Thank you, Shira. All right, cool. I think unless other people have comments, we can move on to the next one. So your screen should have changed now, and this question is, what makes you most nervous about writing? Is it editing, citing your sources, making things sound good, finishing a draft, or is it something else entirely? Me too. Hmm. It was moving in bits and bobs before, but I think it has stopped a bit. So it looks like most people are most nervous about making things sound good, which same. Um, and citing sources is also seems like it is something that makes people nervous. For anyone who said something else, if you'd like to, you can either drop it in the chat or you can say it aloud. What makes you most nervous about writing? I know for me, and I'm being so serious, it is finding synonyms for words that I repeat all the time, because I will use a word like 20 times in a paragraph. Um, but yeah, for people who said something else, is there something that makes you nervous about writing?
Maybe not sure if you saw in the chat, but we had someone who said creativity and evoking emotion.
Mm, that's a good one. Thank you. I do not see the chat right
Yeah, you're good.
now.
Organizing and finishing a draft is another one.
Mm, yeah, organizing is hard. Even just the outline, I feel.
I'll share, I know for myself, having people review my writing makes me nervous and feeling as though I might be critiqued on that or people might view me differently depending on how my writing is.
Agreed. Same. All right, awesome. We hope that this, if you are approaching an NPDI application or if you're just trying to hop into the grant writing space, we hope this has made you feel a little bit less alone, either in navigating an application or in, maybe asking for help with another written component that you may be working on. Hopefully this mentee has made you feel a little bit more comfortable and like you're not alone there. Um, so welcome to everyone. I think we've all been here before. Is that right? If you'd like to, you can drop your name and title and pronouns if you'd like in the chat. Um, but Shira and I have a little presentation for you guys today about writing tips and the read and RFR. One more second. Again, I'm so sorry. I'm so bad at sharing my screen. I promise I'm going to get better one day.
And just before Phoebe starts, feel free to either unmute yourself if you have questions. We're going to try to keep an eye on the chat as best we can. But if there's something we missed, just feel free to shout it out.
All righty. So welcome to Virtual Technical Assistant, How to Read an RFR and Writing Techniques for the LUK New Program Development Initiative, or the NPDI. Or if you're just tagging along for the ride. Um,
I'm Shira. I am LUK's funder and community partnership coordinator in program development.
And I am Phoebe. I am the Program Development Assistant here at LUK. How do you feel about writing? We already did this. Yay.
Awesome. So like we've been saying, the purpose of this presentation is to help assistants when reading an RFR and share some writing techniques. And request for response, or an RFR, is the mechanism by which a funder announces the availability of funding, eligibility requirements, timelines, and evaluation criteria. Ours is posted on luk.org/NPDI, so you can view that there. RFRs are important because it communicates priorities, gives details for applications, and guides the projects and meeting the funder's goals. And our goal is to help you best communicate your ideas and turn those ideas into projects. We know you have ideas, and we know that they're brilliant and that they're great. And so we want to help you as best you can communicate that.
So a little bit about the RFR component. So these are the parts of what is actually within the RFR. So RFR key component that includes a cover page. So something like, this is the project and this is the person. Cover page will also require your director or supervisor. Oh gosh, what's the word? Approval. There we go. Any eligibility requirements. So that is what you need to have to be able to apply. Any funding details. So any general questions about what funding is available. The goals of the grant and the funder for NPDI. That has to be to hear your amazing ideas and see what we can implement internally within the agency. Other key components are scope of the work. So what is the general impact that this might have? The actual application process. So the actual application questions, what you will be responding to, what parts you're going to need to submit, any attachments that you may need to submit alongside the actual application package. All of that, including attachment templates and the application questions themselves, are on NPDI website. That is on the LUK website, the NPDI webpage. Also in the RFR are instructions for submission. So how do you even submit? And evaluation criteria, which is basically, what is the funder looking for? And how will your application be scored? Another component within the RFR are the terms and conditions. So any reporting expectations that may be expected after a project is awarded. And we will go into some of these in more detail later on with a couple actual excerpts from the RFR.
So how to actually read the RFR. Like Phoebe said, we'll go into more details, but the first thing is to just kind of do a skim first and then deep dive. There's a lot of information, so making sure that you're digesting it all, like I said, skimming it first and then going in more details. Read the guidelines. Before you dive right into the reading, make sure you read the funder's guidelines and you understand what they're looking for, what they're asking you. Note any specific questions or instructions, the expectation or expectations that the funder has. So there might be expectations around font, or there might be expectations around size of margins or things like that. If there's specific questions they're asking you, such as, why should we fund this? Just really paying attention to that piece. Also paying attention to any eligibility criteria, objectives, budget, timeline for formation or the submission process. If there's any word, character, page limits, those are kind of things to keep in mind too. And then also using tools is really helpful. So what we'll do sometimes in program development is highlight important information such as dates and deadlines. If there's terms or definitions that the funder uses that we don't use, we'll make sure to reflect that back in the language. And so we'll highlight that. And usually a mandatory requirements list for documents. So if that's helpful to create a checklist, that is beneficial sometimes. So there might be attachments like a budget that you need to include, or other attachments such as resumes. And so for us, we'll go through and kind of create a checklist so we know what is there. And like we've been saying, there's a lot of information both in the RFR and also in general, there's a lot of attachments that need to be included. So ask for clarification and we're here to help.
A couple things to avoid when reading an RFR. There's no such thing as guaranteed funding, unfortunately, in the grant world. As awesome as it would be to submit a paper that says please and then they give you the money, does not exist. But there are some common issues that you can avoid to help when you are preparing an application. Make sure that you are reading carefully to make sure you have every date and deadline there. There is probably no worse feeling than looking and being like, oh no, there was a deadline. So make sure that you read through that carefully. Any eligibility criteria, make sure that you are able to apply and that you meet all the eligibility requirements. Because the criteria usually helps a funder to determine if you can apply. Ignoring instructions, format issues, and or missing documents are also things that may dock you. Um, for NPDI, you can always reach out and ask for clarification on formatting issues and missing documents. Pretty lenient, so and do not make assumptions. If there is something in the RFR that you do not understand, you can always ask for help. Shira and I are going to repeat this until we're blue in the face, and I'm going to look in my screen with my beady little eyes right now and say, "We are here. You can ask us for help. We are present." You can always email npdi@luk.org, or you can reach out to one of the program development team people directly for help. Ask us for help. We are here.
So this is the example of the RFR. I don't know if we'll have time to pull up the whole thing, so we just kind of took some snippets. But this is really what is critical information. So the release date you can see came out September. The intent to apply is due towards the end of October. So just keep that in mind if you are intending to apply this year. It's about 3 weeks from today to the date. Full application is not due until next month. And then the planning period that you have runs from the beginning of October up until the end of the fiscal year, with the actual implementation happening over the course of the next fiscal year. So that would be fiscal year 27, I believe. Yes, okay, 27, perfect. And then some of the contents that are included in the RFR is the background, so kind of an explanation of how NPDI came about, why we're deciding to do this, the objectives that we're looking for, like we've said about what eligibility criteria is. So, there might be restrictions a funder has in terms of geographical location, or there might be restrictions around the size of the project or how long it runs for. For example, only running for the actual implementation of the fiscal year is something that you might need to keep in mind. Some restrictions, we have information about the funding available, what the expectations are, the actual application process itself and what that entails, the support that's available, whether that be office hours or, meeting offline, and resources online as well. LUK's artificial intelligence AI statement, the timeline, looking at how long everything will run for, when things are due, what kind of meetings we have, the application content itself, language or accommodations if required, how we're actually evaluating the criteria of the application and what we're looking for when we grade it. And then post-application, what that process looks like and the debrief process afterwards.
Here are some of those components in a bit more zoomed in detail right from the RFR. Our application evaluation criteria. So those applications that will be submitted to NPDI for funding are going to be reviewed and evaluated using criteria described within the RFR, which summarizes the questions found in the NPDI application. And the points will indicate the relative importance of each section. So that's a good tip to pay attention to the point value, because that may help you determine how much time you may want to spend on each section. For example, if there's a section of the RFR that is 2 points, you may not spend as much time on that as a part of the RFR that is 10 points, let's say. So points will be allocated based on the extent to which the application proposal addresses each of the criteria listed. These are some of the eligibility criteria. So you need to meet one or more of the NPDI objectives listed in the RFR. Align with LUK's mission, vision, and core values, which are linked. You can fit within one of LUK's divisions or components. So I use this example often, but as much as I would love to get jetpacks for everyone at LUK, not sure which component that would fit into. Have the support of that division component or director. So for your idea, you will need to make sure that the division or component that it fits into is able to be implemented and also is not being replicated somewhere else in the agency. If your idea has to do with expanding an existing program, that would be something that you would talk with your director about anyway. So making sure you have the support of that division component or director. If you think that your idea may fit within a component or division that is not your own, you can always talk to your director about getting in touch with another component. You have to operate within LUK service area, so Central Massachusetts, Worcester County. You must be the person submitting it as the eligible applicant. Comply with all applicable laws and regulations. So again, as much as I would like to get everyone at LUK a jetpack, I need to comply with all the aviation rules that come with that. And it cannot be a current or former NPDI funded project unless there are substantial changes to the model. At the moment, we have NPDI projects that were funded in the last fiscal year that are currently under implementation at the moment. So you cannot be a current or former NPDI funded project to be eligible. For more details about eligibility, make sure that you take a peek at the RFR itself, which depending on time we'll be able to do. But if not, always take a peek, always refer back to the RFR.
And then information about the application process itself. First step is optional, but strongly recommended. So we did want to share this here. But this is to pitch your idea to program development staff by next week. If you have an idea and you have time, we recommend setting a time aside to sign up for us, preferably the sooner the better, but we also understand life happens. And this is really just to meet with you to help clarify the idea, to identify if there's a mentor that might be helpful in assisting you, offering suggestions, or if there's another project that we hear of similar, we might connect you guys. So really just brainstorm kind of wherever you are in the process. We do recommend reviewing the materials, but also if you're very early on stages of just you have an idea and you want to discuss it, we are here to help. Second step is by October 22nd, so 3 weeks from now, to submit an intent to apply. And this is required. So the intent to apply is non-binding, which means if you have an idea, submit it, but you do not need to submit a full application. You cannot submit a full application if you do not submit an intent to apply. So I'll repeat again, the submit to apply is required by October 22nd. And again, this is just so we can make sure that you have a strong start in the process. And the example is that if, two different applicants have the same idea, we can connect them to create a single application. So again, this is really critical just so we can see what your ideas are and is required to submit the full application. Once that is submitted and we connect with you, give you some feedback, a full application is due by, I guess, week of Thanksgiving. So no later than November 26th with all the required attachments. On the website gives the full list of attachments, everything that's needed, and it's actually on the next slide too, so we'll go over that. But that is everything that's due November 26th. And then the NPDI review team will review all the applications and make recommendations to LUK's management team, and MT will make the call of the final project to be funded. And then the final step is to use your experience. So feel free to join program development seminar, and we definitely encourage you to use the skills that you have either built or are continuing to build outside of the NPDI process.
And we mentioned before that there will be some attachments that will be required. All of these attachments have templates that are on the NPDI website, the www.luk.org/NPDI. So make sure that you check these off as you are completing them. So the intent to apply form, which you just mentioned, just confirming that, hey, this is my idea. It's a non-binding form, but this is I would like to potentially apply to NPDI. The cover sheet, which has your name, project title, and approval from your supervisor or director. Um, Application questions for response, which will be the application to the RFR. A line item budget form. So this is a form that just tells us basically a quick rundown about, hey, this is the money that this may require to run this idea or this program. Um, and this is each thing that needs to be paid for. A logic model, which is a form, it's a template, and it basically shows resources, activities, and what those will be producing. So a quick little overview sheet form about the logic behind why this is needed and what it'll cost and what it'll consist of. And then the timeline. So what sort of, sequentially how this project will be rolling out. Also a couple quick notes. If your idea is a one-off sort of concept, so something capital, like some kind of furniture or building, constructing something within a space or something like that. This may look a little bit different for you, and we encourage you to reach out for specific guidance on how to complete these for a one-off type of program. Also, for a lot of these, such as the logic model and the timeline, we will be having specific NPDI sessions walking through how to fill those out. So make sure that you come to those seminars to learn about how you fill those out.
Just a quick note before we hop into the writing piece, sessions will be recorded. So if you can't make it for whatever reason, we know that sometimes it's difficult during the lunch hour. There is the option to watch online. And again, we're here to meet. And the other thing I was going to ask is just, does anyone have any questions around how to review an RFR or specific to the NPDI one before we hop into writing? Okay. Think we can move on. And if you guys have questions, again, feel free to drop it in the chat or unmute. So up next, we have writing. Now that you have the RFR, actually getting into it. So some of the general writing techniques that we have are to first know your audience, looking at the funder's mission, vision, goals, seeing if it supports what you're doing at your agency, but also seeing if what they want to support aligns with your goals. So if a funder is unfortunately not going to fund jetpacks, that's unfortunate, and you might want to look elsewhere for your funding. Next thing is just kind of understanding the structure and organization of an RFR. So there might be very definitive things on the application. They might ask really specific questions and things you need to include, or it could just be kind of more informal or more open-ended questions. Sometimes it's as simple as just writing a letter and you may get funded. Clear and concise language, so writing as clear as possible. And NPDI, we are not checking for grammar, we are not checking for spelling, so don't stress if that's something that you're worried about. But the difference is just kind of making writing as clear as possible. And so using the active voice, which is when the subject of the sentence is performing the action of the verb, or the person doing the thing is the action in the spotlight. So rather than saying, rather than saying the email was sent by me, which can be a little difficult to understand, just saying I sent the email. So again, just changing it to more active. And then the other kind of writing techniques that we have are, one is an acronym of T paragraphs. And I actually learned this in high school and it's been really helpful since. But it stands for topic, sentence, evidence, and analysis. So your T, or the topic sentence, is the main idea of your paragraph. And that is, maybe an explanation, maybe context, but primarily what you want to say. The E is the evidence of your topic or sentence, of your topic sentence rather. And so that is data, that's statistics. In this case, it could also be a quote, or it could be some kind of testimony or story. And that is backing up your topic sentence. And then the A is the analysis. So really putting it all together and explaining how the evidence supports your topic sentence, or just kind of illustrating what you want to say. So if, for example, let's say we want to create an after-school gun violence prevention program, the topic sentence could be, we want to create this program. The evidence might be, an increase in violence. It might be these programs have been effective elsewhere. It might be an anecdotal story of someone who's lost someone. But these kind of things to back up why you want to create the program. And then that's really that analysis is kind of putting it all together. So we know this is going to be effective because we've seen it before, or this is why we want to replicate it in our own community, and just kind of putting everything all together. And then the other technique that can be helpful is to keep in mind the three methods of persuasion. And this is like rhetoric or a little bit of like the argument or not argument, the art of persuasion. So thinking about times when you've been persuaded either in an argument or writing or I don't know, making a donation or something like that. There's kind of three different appeals from Aristotle that appeal to people. So the first method is ethos, which is persuasion by establishing credibility. So that can be credibility, that can be authority, that can be character. So again, for the example of the gun violence prevention program, we could talk about our credibility and say we've been in the community for over 50 years now, and we've worked with law enforcement, we've worked with community leaders, we've worked with public health professionals, etc. The next is logic. And logic really is appealing, or logos, which is really appealing to logic and reason. And so that one, again, might be using logical facts or statistics, which could be something like the CDC reports that gun violence is the leading cause of death between the ages of et cetera, et cetera. And then the last method of persuasion is pathos, which is appealing to the audience's emotions. And so that one, again, might be an emotional appeal. So telling a story of someone who's lost a loved one or telling a story of someone who's been directly impacted by this. And those are just kind of three different ways to think about how to persuade the reader when reading an RFR or when reading the response of why they should be funding your project.
So some things to consider when writing an actual proposal. Make sure that there is a background, so giving details about either the situation that is trying to be addressed by your proposal or any background in terms of the area that you're trying to write about for your proposal. That also feeds into the rationale and significance, so the justification. Why does your proposal need to exist? Why does this project need to happen? We'll be talking in some future sessions about need and justification, so tune in for those. Objectives linked with outcomes. So when talking about measurable impact, so now you have a project and you've described why that project needs to exist. So objectives and outcomes are things to say, okay, this is what my project will achieve, and then this is how we're going to measure that it has made an impact. So we'll be able to give 5 jetpacks for every new staff member, and we'll be able to measure impact by a happiness survey for how happy staff are with the jetpacks. Methods and outputs or actions for each objective. So what does each objective produce? The timeline and key personnel. So we talked a little bit about timeline in terms of just sequentially, how will this project play out? What is the planning period? What will implementation look like, etc. And who are the important people? If your idea needs staff, who do you need to make sure is involved within that project? And a big thing, especially when writing a proposal, is just write. It's called a draft for a reason. If you think that your draft is going to not be great, that's totally okay. No first draft is good. No first draft is perfect. During this part of the writing process, try not to get sidetracked by trying to be perfect. Your focus is more about making sure that you've said what you need to say on the page before you can go back and make it pretty imperfect and make all the edits that you need to make.
All right, so now you've put pen to paper, or I guess on your keyboard, typing everything, and it is finally time to clean it up and review your writing. So just a few things to keep in mind when doing so. One is using the 3 R's, so review, revise, and refine. So when you're reviewing your paper, really just thinking critically of asking yourself, am I answering the question? Am I answering what the funder is asking me? Am I doing that? again, highlighting can be helpful to show exactly where, this is where I think I'm answering the question. I did a good job of that. Asking yourself, so what? So example of, the gun violence prevention program, we know that gun violence is an issue. So what? So why is this important? Why should this be funded? What evidence is there to support this? Is this the right kind of evidence that I'm sharing? Is the paper organized? Does it make sense? Did I say everything I want to say? And then asking, is this something that I would fund myself, or is this something that maybe I would fund it, but I need to have a few adjustments first and a few edits. Next thing is proofreading for errors. Like I said, in NPDI, we are not paying attention to grammatical, spelling, punctuation errors, so don't stress too much about that. But typically we do just kind of make sure that everything makes sense. Ensuring consistency in formatting and citation style. Again, NPDI, this is not something you need to focus on, but we typically do APA. For us, you can do for NPDI, you can do something as simple as just putting in the link. We just really want to make sure if you are sharing sources, we know where they're coming from and that it's a reputable source. And we'll have more details on that in another presentation, I think in a few weeks. And then again, reviewing grammar, spelling, punctuation, syntax, all that. Other thing is to check for excess repetition of words, phrases, and sentence constructions. I think, Phoebe, you kind of mentioned this earlier of finding new words to say what you want to say. So it's, trying to find the thesaurus, if there's another word you can use, or just in general, just trying to make sure that you're not kind of just repeating. Sometimes it can be repetitive, so making sure that you're saying the idea in a new way. It's always helpful to have a friend proofread, especially if they're not applying. They might be able to catch things that you didn't see before, or if you don't have a friend who is reading it, or friend can't read it for some reason, or you don't want someone to read it. I will often leave my writing for a day or two and just kind of let it sit. And that way, when I pick it back up, I have a new set of eyes when I'm reading it. And then finally is reviewing it against the RFR. You have the tools, the RFR, to answer what they're looking for, what the funder's looking for. And so really just kind of making sure to compare the two and just making sure that you've answered everything and you've said what you want to say.
So here are a couple resources that you can use either as you're writing or as you're planning that may be helpful. So this is Instrumental. You may have heard about Instrumental before. This is a grant site. It has a lot of really good resources, including grant writing for beginners. This is a little guide for however you'd like to. You can read what is a grant, what do grant cycles look like, and a lot of information that may be similar to what we've talked about today, but nonetheless kind of cool. I won't go through every single one of these, but Learn Grant Writing is another resource that you can use if you'd like to look into some grant writing resources. Grants.gov has a lot of good grant one-on-ones for, things like specific timelines or budgets that would be good to use if you're looking for more information about how to think about crafting those things. Candid Learning is also a really good one. In regular program development, Candid is a really good way to find public-facing documents such as 990 forms or tax forms or other things like that. But Candid Learning is also a really good site for a lot of basics, things that we've gone over today, or some very juicy articles about anything that has to do with grant writing, grant formation going on today. And of course, LUK NPDI website. If you have not looked at this before, highly recommend that you do. Look at all this information, the eligibility, the RFR. You can see the application right here, all the templates. If there is something that you need, there's a very, very high chance that the NPDI website has it. All these resources, a glossary, the acronyms list is up to their eyeballs and acronyms. Everyone has an acronym that they don't know what it means at LUK. Me too. And the glossary is right here to help you with everything. We also have a bunch of frequently asked questions. If you have a question about either the RFR or the process, anything like that, any eligibility, there is a good chance that a question here has been answered. So definitely take a peek at this. If you do have a question that is not answered here, and we do have a few that will be posted here eventually that we have answered since the RFR went up, then you can always feel free to contact us to ask a question. I believe, ooh, didn't mean to not share, my bad. There are going to be Q&A responses for a time up till time of submission.
I used to have a teacher in high school say this, but no such thing as dumb questions. The only dumb question is the one you don't ask. So we can't emphasize this enough that we're here to help. So if there's a question you have, whether you want to, ask it here if it comes to mind, or you think of something when you leave, or just want to ask one-on-one instead of in a group, that's totally fine. We are here to help. NPDI@LUK.org is the email, and I'll drop it in the chat too, so that way you guys have it. And we are also doing office hours, which is a little new this year. But Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays are typical office hours. And if you need a time outside of that, just email us and we'll work with your schedule. But Monday from 12 to 1 is my office hours. Sandy's are 3 to 4 on Wednesdays. She unfortunately just can't be here right now, but her office hours are still occurring. And Phoebe's are tomorrow, or in theory tomorrow, but is out unfortunately. So Thursdays from 1 to 2. Yeah, so I don't know if there's any questions that people have. Feel free to unmute or throw it in the chat. I know it was a lot of information, so we will be sharing this later. It'll be posted on YouTube and Talent LMS.
I do have a question. The resources for this go around for the NPDI, we're using the videos from this current cycle, or are we using the videos from the previous ones if someone is new and they're going to be writing and want to access resources?
Oh, go ahead, Shira, sorry.
No, you're good. You got it.
I believe it will be able to update recordings, but we also do still have the recordings from last year. So we'll be updating as we go. We are recording these ones for updated information for any slight changes, including deadlines and dates for this RFR.
Okay, thank you.
And sorry, I did get a question about the agency's policy regarding AI use. So this is the policy itself is in the RFR, but also quick reminder, ChatGPT and other AI writing tools cannot be used to write actual components of the RFR. If you need to use AI maybe to think of a program name or something like that, that is fine, but no actual components can be written. Thank you, Shara. You can also read the LUK's full AI policy in the link that Shara just popped in there. But you cannot write anything that will actually be submitted as a written component using AI. Any other questions, concerns, letters of recommendation, letters of not recommendation?
I was gonna just quickly share my screen too. Like I said, the full policy can be found in the link that I shared, but this is from the actual RFR around artificial intelligence. So let me zoom in. But applicants may not use AI to write responses to application questions, like Phoebe said. And then you can use it for researching and collecting data sets. Just make sure to actually go over that and that's verified. Sometimes it's not accurate. Like Phoebe said, generating project names, finding a quotes. So if you need a quote, sometimes that might be a good opener, depending on the funder. Again, just make sure to verify the accuracy. And then obtaining background and context of an issue. So if there's something that you're unfamiliar with, again, just using AI, but make sure to verify the accuracy of any information because it is not always accurate.
All right. If you have any further questions or comments, concerns, feel free to email npdi@luk.org, or you can reach out to Shara and I, or you can join any of the office hours from Shara, myself, and or Sandy. I believe if no one else has any questions or Shara, you don't have anything to add, we can return 10 minutes of your day.
Yeah, sounds good to me. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.